We always hear about metadata from places like Facebook or Amazon where they're mining a ton of information on you. They know everything about you. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could get some kind of information like this that talks about the buying and selling patterns of people everywhere? Now, that data does exist. And for millions of people, they are going online every single day looking at the prices of housing, not necessarily because they're buying or selling. Maybe they're thinking about it, but maybe they're just trying to keep up to what's going on in their local market to know what their own home is worth. And we have access to a lot of this information. So in Canada, there's something called realtor.ca, same thing in the States, realtor.com. And in Canada, we have over a million people, which is a lot. We have a small population, just over 30 million, but we have a million people per day going online. So if I was going to extrapolate that, the States might be 11 million people per day. Now we're watching everything that they're doing and we have access to some of that metadata. And I want to show you what's happening because it's quite startling because we're seeing millions of people all bending their behavior and changing drastically. The way that I would liken it is like this, because I think of it like the people are getting burned with all of this intensive interest rate hikes, and we're just getting pounded into submission over and over and over again. So, what we could do is we could look at our local insights. And so, what I've done for you today, I curated just a couple different cities, and I want to take a look at what has changed. What has changed? Okay. So we're going to look in 2022 in the first quarter. We're just going to go back 1 year and I'm going to pick Vancouver and Toronto. So they're two cities with many, many millions of people. In addition, we're going to look at a very, very small market to see if the small markets are behaving any differently. So I'm going to write them down and then we're going to review them after in a minute. If you can notice, 1 year ago in 2022, quarter one, this is just before the war, everyone was looking for properties over $1 million. 6.6% of people, this was very common. This is the number one search was for people at $1 million buckaroos. Okay, so if we go down, not a big surprise, right? Everybody wants to live on the waterfront. And normally, waterfront, it doesn't change what city, what country you go to. Everybody wants to live on the water. Number one filter to put in. Also, as you can see, there was some hope in the air. 25 to 34-year-olds are by far the majority of people that are looking to buy. That's very, very interesting in that age. And user personas, look at this. The vast majority of people were repeat buyers, even though they were at this very young age. This is very, very interesting for us to know. So let's just fast forward 1 year and take a look at what happened in 2023, first quarter again. Now we're going to go into, again, this is millions of searches all getting pumped into one. What is the new first search? Remember, last year, just 12 months ago, the number one search was $1 million. Now it is 500,000. This is what it's telling you, that people are being squeezed by these rates and things are changing a lot. So this is the number that people are being given today, that they cannot spend over 500,000. That's a huge change. Not a big surprise. Everybody wants to be on the waterfront. Of course, it's even higher now, if you notice. But this is the big surprise as well. The 25 and 34-year-olds are no longer the biggest case of people who are online. They're giving up. Not as many of them are even looking anymore. We're now going into the mid stage of life. 35 to 44-year-olds are by far the ones that are looking the most. And look at this. Even the seniors are looking for properties more because a lot of them are selling their properties at the top to lock in their profits that they've made over their life for their retirement. But again, repeat buyers are the number one person who is looking for this. So let's just see, does this change very much if we go to a place like Toronto? Now, Toronto's the other side of the country, but it is the closest if we were going to look at the two biggest markets in Canada. So if we look at there, again, we're going to mine millions and millions of pieces of data. 2022, okay? So the number one search, very surprised at 500,000, but that merely got above the $1 million mark, right? 0.1%. So 500,000 is the lowest one. Look at this in Toronto. Unbelievable. 34% of people want to live on the water. This is like some kind of a record, right? Everybody wants to live on the water. Remember, a year ago, there was a lot more restrictions than there is now. Everybody wants a beautiful look when they open up their window. Also, a year ago, the 25-year-olds, again, same as Vancouver, the majority of people are 25 to 34, and the majority of people are repeat buyers. This is also very, very interesting to note. But if we fast forward 1 year, let's see, what does the year change in Toronto? So again, by far, do you remember last time was only 6% of people were looking for a 500,000, now 11%. When you're talking about millions and millions of people, 5% up is a massive, massive difference. And so when we're now looking, number one by far is looking for 500,000, but look at these other spots. People are looking for really cheap properties. Nobody can afford it anymore. That's a big thing. Not a surprise. Waterfront is still at the very, very top for the number one filter that everybody wants. And then when we come to the age groups, we can also see that the age groups, that 35 to 44-year-old range, is hugely coming up now and is taking its number one spot where it wasn't like that before. Now, repeat buyers and first time buyers are both the biggest presence, but number one, the repeat buyers are still there. Now, this is for Toronto. Big changes. Now, I wanted to show you a small place. There's a lot to choose from in Canada, but there was a place that I used to live in Quebec. Vaudreuil-Dorion was the name. And so I wanted to show you what the difference is there. And then we're going to summarize it at the end. Okay. So here we are in Vaudreuil-Dorion, tiny little place. Number one search, $500,000. They too, everybody in their dog wants to live on the waterfront. No big surprise. And the biggest cohort a year ago was 35 to 44. But there was a healthy younger 25 to 34 in there. But almost everybody was a repeat buyer last year. They were hoarding, gorging, if you will, on real estate. Now let's fast forward to where it is a year later. Now that we've had 8 increases in Canada, 9 increases in the United States, we still are, but it's a higher percentage of people at $500,000. Waterfront still number one, no big surprise. But we can see that 35 to 44 has remained strong, but the 25 to 34-year-old buyer is gonzo. They're no longer in the market anymore, which is a really big change. So this, you got to be able to see the effect of when we're talking about millions of people, a million a day looking at properties. This is a big, big change. All right, so let's take a look at this chart here. So I put it all together so that we could review it together so that we have a better idea of what's happening, okay? So if we look at Vancouver is the first city that we have here, we can see number one, this is 2022 and 2023, the 2 years. So last year, they were looking for $1 million property. Now they're looking for a $500,000 property. Obviously, everybody always wants to be on the water. But last year, the majority of people were younger, 25 to 34. This year, the average age for people who are shopping has gone way up. Also, repeat buyers. Now, the repeat buyers are much higher now because they're more savvy. This is in Vancouver, massive, massive place, right? And first-time home buyers are the exact same at 34. Let's look at Toronto, compare the two. Last year, it was tied 500 to a million. This year, it's firmly in the 500 camp. Again, people, what they're looking to spend is half of what it was last year. Same thing, everyone wants to live on the water. But again, the exact same as we did have over here, that the average age is much higher. 20 years higher. That makes a big difference. Also, repeat buyers are much higher, and first-time buyers are actually minimally, repeat buyers are up. Let's go to a small little town, 2022, 2023. Last year, they were looking for an average property, $1 million. Again, now this year, 500,000 is the number one. So if you notice, all 3 markets, they're looking to spend half of what they did last year. Again, they also want to be on the water. Their age bracket, we can see it has severely changed in that the 25-year-old to 35-year-old is no longer looking for properties in the same area. We can notice that across the board. It's all the same. In the smaller area, we're looking at 56% of people are repeat buyers compared to 49%, way up. So what are we noticing? We see the exact same thing. Half the purchase price, which is massive, half the purchase price. We're also noticing everybody, the people who are buying are much older, and we're seeing a lot of repeat buyers. But who is getting hurt by this? It is the young people who are trying to enter into the system. Now, if we look at some crazy chicken stuff that's happening in the United States, because America, they have some new laws coming in that if you have good credit scores, you now are going to have to pay an extra $100 a month as a punishment to having a good credit score to help pay for people who have low credit score because of credit privilege. Well, this is ridiculous because you should be rewarded for good behavior in our whole lives. If we pay our bills on time, have a good credit score, we have a lower interest rate. And so now the reverse is happening where people are going to be deliberately tanking their credit scores, missing payments deliberately so that they're not penalized for having too good a score. Crazy stuff is happening. But in Canada, we are going toward that centrally planned economy with a digital ID. And we're having a new CBDC that is coming out, which is going to be controlled through our dollar. So stuff like this is going to even further affect the market in ways that we can't even predict right now. But what are we seeing today? Young people are having massive, massive problems to buy properties. And where are we going to be seeing the majority of this stuff is going to be in how the mortgages are laid out. So let me show you some of what we're seeing today in the markets. So Canada's population, as you know, is going up like crazy. We had over 1 million people come in last year. We have 1.5 million people estimated to come in the next 2 years. So 1.5 million on the books. But remember, Canada also brings in hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people from around the world as refugees. They don't land in that immigrant target. And then we also have hundreds of thousands of people walking across the border from the US into Canada. So we have even more people than we project, but we have no housing for them. And we can't provide it really because it's too expensive to build. So Canada is going to be struggling with this housing problem, but this is what we keep hearing every single day is that population immigration is going to take care of it. It only self takes care of it if everybody coming into the country has a lot of money in order to be able to afford these $1.2 million homes. It doesn't work if no one has any money because now we need millions of low cost housing, which we do not have. United States doesn't have that either, and they're struggling with it. But look at the difference in the loan calculator. Last year, we saw that everyone was looking for $1 million property, $1 million. 2% is what we got our mortgage last year. $4,200 per month. Just 1 year later, you have the same $1 million mortgage at 6% now. Look at the payment. It's gone to $6,400. It has gone up $2,200, which is equivalent to somebody's entire salary for a month, which is absolutely bananas. So people cannot afford that. But look at the difference here. So you had $1 million property, and over its lifetime, you'd pay $270,000 in interest. Now, today, you have $1 million property, you're going to be paying almost $1 million in interest, which is crazy. So, how is this going to shake out? The only way I know is not very well. A lot of people are going to be running into a lot of problems, especially as their loans renew. So the government has put a couple band-aids on it and allowed people to take their mortgages instead of 25 years to stretch it out to 40 years just on amortization until the time that they renew their mortgage, and then it has to go back to normal. But there's the problem. United States, the number one product is a 30-year fixed mortgage. In Canada, we have to renegotiate our mortgage every 2, 3, 4, 5 years, depending on what you would like. So you get to choose that, but we still always have to renew it. So basically, everyone in Canada is on a variable mortgage. And when that time comes due, when you're coming up, we have a lot of problems with amortization, about how much equity you still have in your property, about buying down the rates, big problems, and the loan to values are going down. So there's going to be a lot of struggle for people. This is probably not going to be like a day like the 2007 crash. That could happen if a lot of banks have contagion, but this also might be this slow burn as 12% of people per year have to renegotiate their mortgages, and that many people get in trouble. But remember, in 2008 and 7, when we had all that trouble for the subprime crisis, it was only 4.5% of the country that ran into that trouble. And look at what happened around the world. So if 12% happen a year, it doesn't take as much as you think to cause some real problems in the economy. Anyway, you guys, I think that this stuff is fascinating. Do you find it fascinating? If you like this type of stuff, please give me a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing and sending it to your friends. I love a good chart. So if you guys see any good articles, I would love it if you would send it my way to look at it. But it's really fascinating for me when I look at all these different markets. And once you can look at a lot of different markets in Europe, Australia, down in the States, and Canada, and I look at them all over the place, you end up seeing all these patterns that start coming out. And so if you can learn the patterns and use the patterns to your advantage, then you can make a lot of money with this. This is going to be one of the best opportunities for you to be making a ton of money. So, over the next several years, as this all plays out, remember that Milton Friedman always said that it takes 3 years for an interest rate to take effect. Well, some of the rate hikes that we've had just happened within the past couple months. So we now would have to wait 3 years to see the effect of that. So we're going to see a lot of effects by that, but it's going to be quite easily for you to double, triple, quadruple, 5 times your money in this time period because there's going to be a lot of flux. So I'm super excited. I hope that you're excited. I think the future is very, very bright for all you people who are going to be proactive and not just reactive. Anyway, guys, please send this to your friends. Remember, the next 2 years is going to dictate the next 2 decades of your life, and I wish you the best.